This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. So, the Line 6 catalyst, this is the CX100. And if you're wondering what is the difference between the old catalyst and this catalyst, you've got piping here and a slightly different grill cloth. There's a couple of differences up on the top end. When I first opened this box, I didn't know at all what was going on. All I knew was that something had changed about the catalyst. Now, it's basically a facelift for the catalyst, right? So, where before there was a black grill, there's now this kind of more salt and pepper and the piping. So essentially it's the same box as it was before, a couple of different controls up the top. However, they've added 6 new amp models or Helix amp models into here. And why you should care about that is because they've also added that same capability to the old Catalyst. So is there a reason to go out and buy this over the old Catalyst? There is, maybe, I don't know, depends if you like the way it looks better or something like that. But essentially it's going to be running the same firmware now, and it can be running, it's essentially the same hardware, just a couple of switches different up the top. But essentially what they've done is given us, with the power of these, you hold these 2 controls and then you get to the second amp bank, access to 6 more amp models. Now this might be particularly interesting for the folks that were a little bit disappointed in the heavier tones from the Catalyst. I still don't think that's where the Catalyst really shines, but they've added the Badonk model in here, which actually has loads and loads of bass, and you can really chug it in a way that probably before it was less easy to get those kind of chuggy tones out of this without maybe the help of pedals or something like that. But where I really think the Catalyst does shine, and where I think it does have a little bit of an edge on the Katana, which I think is also a fantastic product in the range of modelling amplifiers, is just plugging it in and turning on the clean or the boutique channels. It now has the Grammatico GSG, which is a Dumble clone in there on the alternative boutique amp. That's what I started off this intro with. So that's kind of cool, and that one actually I think is the highlight for me of the Catalyst. But for me, the Clarity and the Aristocrat and the Grammatico are really the highlights of the amp. And for me personally, just plugging in a Strat, and I reset it just to get back to exactly that experience, for me I think is pretty fantastic. So there is something going on with this particular model where if I turn to 100 watts, it just seems like this switch is not correctly calibrated on the back, because there's the mute 25, 50, 100 watt thing, and between 50 and 100 watt there's no change in volume, and if I stay on 100 watt, sometimes it switches back to a quieter mode. So I don't know quite what's happening there, but in any case I don't need to worry, because I've got an old Catalyst over there which I can just update with the same firmware, and then this can go back to line 6, so we're fine. So that's the Catalyst. I think good news for existing Catalyst owners to see that there's still life in the Catalyst. And for me, as I say again, just my other Catalyst is under a bunch of cases and stuff. But that's what really shines for me about it, is those clean amps and the kind of slightly edgy, dumbly things, where I think it probably, for me, has a bit of an edge on the Katana. Where the Katana has the edge, for me personally, is that it has an onboard EQ, which the Catalyst doesn't. And that, for me, is a really key part of shaping my kind of lead tones, and certainly the drive tones, which I think is where you can find that with any amp, really, you know, some of the drive tones may not work for you personally. I think that's quite a thing where amps can vary a lot. But for me, I feel like the cleans, the edges of breakup in here are great. The drive tones now with the Badonk, I think, are better than they were before. But for me personally, I think I'd need an EQ with this to really get those drive tones happening the way that I personally would be using them live. But I just, thought it was worth knowing about the fact that the Catalyst has had a facelift. Not exactly what I was expecting, but very cool for existing Catalyst owners. And if you were considering jumping on the Catalyst train, I guess now you'll be considering one with a slightly different grill cloth.